It's like a bad trip. You know, there's nowhere to get off. Once you've started the bad trip, that's it. You're on a downward spiral. There's nowhere to anchor here, so it's not like we can duck in. So we're kind of committed. It can get to you. I'll be honest, it can get to you. And today has just been one of those really, really shitty days. Beautiful morning here, as you can see. Always love this part of Lombok. There's nothing much going on other than Mount Rinjani, and if you can just see, there's the moon up there as well. Don't know if you can see that. I seem to remember last time we came around here I took about 100 shots of this view, but you can't help but look at it. Of course, it is just, it's awesome. That's the only word to describe it. It is truly awesome. So what are we doing today? Well, there's no wind, and that is because the volcano blocks all the wind. Out there's loads going on. We have been told by Ollie, who came up here day before yesterday, that there's quite a bit of swell around this first bit, and already as we escape from the lee of the islands over there, the swell is starting to pick up. So he said it's not particularly comfortable, and of course no wind. So it's about 15 miles up to the tip. After that we have to make a decision as to whether we duck into a little anchorage 25 miles away from here, or if we carry on straight to Madana. Not sure. The good news is I've managed to fix the water maker, as I thought it was a hose that had just popped off, so that's good. So we've got it running at the moment, fingers crossed. Turn the instruments on, no depth, but I managed to jiggle a few cables and we've got that working, but of course still no autopilot. This is the home stretch until we get to Madana, and then of course we've got to, oh sorry, and the other thing I forgot to mention, the down switch on the windlass has stopped working. Oh dear, it never ends. It really never ends.
No wind, engine on, northeasterly swell, and we are doing this. All I can say is I'm really pleased that Jamie managed to sort out the gimbal a couple of days ago, so now I can use the hot plate as much as I like, I think.
Here we are motoring up the coast, no wind, and the swell is an absolute bastard. We're all over the place. This camera has stabilisation on it. I should really turn it off just to really give you a true idea of just exactly how rolly it is, but it's not very pleasant at all. We are literally doing this. Fortunately everything is stowed down below. Liz, like the trooper that she is making tea and coffee, so good on her. So we've got another 2.5, 3 hours of this, I think. Apparently it, because it's coming from the, what is it? It's the northeast. So I think when we get round the corner, it will die off a little, but it's just a little bit frustrating that we've got no wind. We were doing 5 knots, but the current has picked up a bit, so we have slowed down speed. There's nothing worse than being stuck in shitty conditions with no wind, doing 2 or 3 knots. Happy to say we're going a little bit faster than that, but it's that's what it is.
So this morning we did pay a little bit more attention to stowing. Everything is away and all the lockers are locked, simply because we had been told that around this particular area there was quite a big swell coming in. A friend of ours had gone ahead a day before and he wasn't wrong. It is quite a big swell. Don't mind them, we're used to them. It's a following swell, so that's good. But it does mean a lot of rocking around. At the moment, doesn't seem to be any poltergeists below and everything is staying in its place.
Well, it's been some hours now and we've only just made it round the headland, and I just thought I would dispel a couple of misconceptions. Quite often people say to us in the comments, a bad day on the boat is better than a good day in the office. Let me tell you, that is absolute bullshit. I've had many bad days and many good days in an office, and many bad days and many good days on a boat. And believe me, a bad day on a boat is insufferable, and today is one of them. The main reason is because we've had 2.5 knots of current against us, no wind, and as you can see, this very, very sloppy sea. When you think of bad seas, you think of big breaking waves, but sometimes the worst seas can be like this, which is just completely confused. There seems to be no rhyme nor reason about which way the waves are going. Of course, you've got the cape, the effect of a cape, two bodies of sea meeting each other. And don't forget, of course, we're having to hand steer. So the other misconception I wanted to get across was quite often people say, oh, I love hand steering, and so do we. In clement conditions, when you're having to hand steer against seas like this, where the boat, not only is the boat corkscrewing, but of course you're being thrown about like this as well, so your body is constantly compensating for that movement. It's like a bad trip. You know, there's nowhere to get off. Once you've started the bad trip, that's it, you're on a downward spiral. There's nowhere to anchor here, so it's not like we can duck in, so we're kind of committed. And I think that's the one thing that keeps you going, you know. You once you've committed, it's like, right, just got to get this over with. But, you know, when you're having to steer in these kind of conditions, you're only doing 2.5 knots. And every time you look down at the chart plotter and you haven't moved, it can get to you. I'll be honest, it can get to you. And today has just been one of those really, really shitty days. It's the kind of day of sailing where you just, well, it's not sailing, is it? It's motoring. You just think, why the f*** am I doing this? There's no pleasure in it at all. Sometimes, just sometimes, I wish that I could get out of bed, put my foot on solid floor, jump into a shower and have a hot shower for an indefinite amount of time, not worry about water, dry myself off, put my shoes, socks and clothes on, step out front door and go for a walk down the street into the park and walk on grass. Just occasionally you get moments like that, and today is one of those moments.
We need to talk about stowage, don't we?
Do we?
Yes, we do. It's something actually that came up in last week's episode, our podcast on the 6 things that you need to know as cruising, and one of them was stowage/storage.
Yes, just to make your passages more comfortable, because as you saw in the footage of this particular trip, you can see unusually how clean Esper's interior is. It's spotless, there's no mess anywhere, which is not the case now while we're sitting at anchor, is it?
No, it's very different. Did we know we were going to get that way then? So had we decided to stow properly?
I think that's the key thing, is forward planning. So we mentioned Ollie, who we had been sailing with, and he had gone ahead of us and had warned us that this passage was going to be quite rolly, and we just know from experience that when a passage is rolly, you need to be on top of all your stowing.
Yeah, the reason for that is that you don't want things to fly around the cabin and smash and break, or more importantly, you don't want them to hit you as you're down there. And we don't say this lightly. We do know a friend's brother died crossing the Atlantic when he was hit by a flying can. That is how serious it is, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I mean, in our early days, I remember not stowing properly, and sometimes you'd go down below and the place would just be a mess. I do remember someone explaining how they hadn't stowed all their paper books correctly. And on a rough passage, all the books fell down eventually into the bilges, which had been filling up with water. And the problem there is that you start creating a papier-mâché type effect in your bilges, which will then block all your bilge pumps. So if you start flooding, the bilge pumps aren't going to work. So just things like that, which...
Don't have anything loose, nothing loose, really. That's the answer. I mean, we've gone to the stage where, I mean, most yachts have cupboard doors and drawers that close and lock when they close, but sometimes that's not good enough if it's really rough. So we've gone to the stage now where we've got bolts across as well, everything. And you need to make sure that your ordinary doors will close properly and won't just bounce open. You can't understand how much a boat moves around unless you've been on one, and then you will know. And they get thrown in all kinds of directions with furious force, and that is quite often enough to open drawers and cabinets, isn't it? So yeah, make sure everything is away. We don't have so much anymore, but we have a drinks cabinet with glasses in it, and I stuff that full of cushions so that everything is solid and not moving, because that is the other thing. I mean, throw it into the drawer or the cupboard or whatever it is, the locker, but it needs to then not move around in there, banging against the door, trying to get out and smashing itself.
Yeah, even things like your cutlery drawers. Yeah. Hopefully your boat's designer will have already designed your drawers in such a way that when they push in, they drop so that they cannot be pulled out. You have to have a latch on the drawer to allow you to unlock the drawer. But also don't forget stowing on deck as well. I mean, in the past we have lost jerry cans overboard because we did with a makeshift board and lashed our jerry cans down to that board, and in rough weather we lost a jerry can overboard. So now you've probably seen them, we have an integrated stainless sort of, I don't know how you describe it really, but we can slot our jerry cans into this stainless arrangement and lash them down to
dedicated area for those jerry cans.
Things like your dinghy as well. So as you know, we don't tow our dinghy, we always hoist our dinghy. But it is lashed in a number of ways, not just to stop it from moving up and down, but also so it stops moving laterally. So we have it's actually Dyneema, so we use Dyneema lines that don't stretch. That's the other important thing, so that we can lash it diagonally so the dinghy doesn't move this way, because over many hours that will start to work loose.
Yeah, we've looked behind and see the dinghy moving in the middle of some of this terrible weather and had to go on deck. So I'm not trying to scare people, but just saying that it is something that you do very seriously need to think about, and really, to be honest, you should do it all the time.
Of course, every passage.
The boat is a bit flatter now, so it's a bit easier to steer. We are on around between 4 and 4.5 knots we're making under engine. We've got 1.5 knots of current against us, and we've got about 2 hours to go before we get to the marina, where we're going to take a mooring tonight with a bit of luck.
How do you feel?
I'm a bit tired, to be honest, but I'm sure once I've had some nice food and conversation, I'll be happier.
And the dogs?
I didn't want to mention the dogs, but Jack and Tiger in particular, as well as Moxie and Dave, can't wait to see them.
I think you've heard me say before, there is no such thing as one job on the boat, because one job invariably turns into another 4 sub-jobs relating to that one job, and that's exactly the problem we have with our autopilot. So we have examined it, and it appears as if the seals have gone in the unit, in the hydraulic ram. There's a bit of oil on the actual ram itself and oil around the casing where the motor is. So that's clearly our problem. Well, that's one of the problems. The bigger problem is trying to get the ram out. So we've been speaking to Hendro, and he's been looking at this, and he seems to think that providing the seals are standard and not custom seals made by B&G, he should be able to fix it. But the problem is getting the ram out. Now bear in mind this was installed 10 years ago, and the ram sits on its own aluminium plate, which is then bolted into a stainless plate. And that's the problem. We've managed to get 2 of the bolts out, but we can't get the other 2 out. They go through the base of the ram and into this plate, but they're not threaded. They're only threaded at the nut. So you'd think they would drop out. They're not. They are not budging. The main problem though is that we can't get access to the top of them because the ram sits over the top of them. The ram is designed to move backwards and forwards like so, and up and down, but there is limited space in which the ram can move because of all the other things around it.